Good evening, my friends. I want you to do something for me right now. Not when I finish speaking, not after you decide whether you agree with what I'm about to say. Right now, I want you to close your eyes for just a moment. Go ahead. Trust me, and think of a time when something went terribly wrong, a door that shut unexpectedly, a relationship that ended, a plan that fell apart, a dream that seemed to fade away. Hold it in your mind. Now, and this is the important part, I want you to think about what came after that loss. What opened because that closed? Who you became because that broke down? Where you ended up because you couldn't stay where you were? Can you see it? For most of you, there is something there. A faint, quiet realization that the thing you mourned, truly mourned, convinced yourself was a disaster, was in hindsight one of the most important things that ever happened to you. Open your eyes. What you just touched in those few seconds, that recognition, that retroactive trust, is the entire teaching for tonight. My question to you is simple. What if you could live there, not in hindsight, but now, in the middle of it, before the resolution appears, before you can see how it all works out? What if you could move through your life with a steady, unshakable knowing, not hope, not optimism, not wishful thinking, but a deep, structural knowing that everything, without exception, is working out for you? I am here to tell you tonight that this is not a fantasy. It is a law, and you have access to it right now in this very moment. Let me begin by telling you what this teaching is not. It is not a motivational mantra. It is not positive thinking wrapped in spiritual language. It is not the idea that you paste a smile over your pain and pretend everything is fine. I have no interest in any of those things, and I suspect neither do you, otherwise you wouldn't be here. This is metaphysics. This is the foundational structure of how reality is actually formed. At the level beneath appearances, beneath what your senses report to you, beneath the evidence your circumstances seem to present as fixed fact, the law is this: what you assume to be true hardens into fact. Not sometimes, not under perfect conditions, not when you perform the right technique or say the right words or have enough faith by someone else's standard. Always. Your consciousness is always creating. Right now, in this moment, whatever you are most deeply assuming about yourself, about life, about what is possible for you, that assumption is the seed from which your experienced reality is growing. This means the question is never whether you are creating, because you are always creating. The only question is, what are you assuming? For most people, even thoughtful and intelligent people who have read every book and attended every seminar and genuinely want to understand, the dominant assumption is a quiet, constant, almost unconscious whisper that says, "I'm not sure this will work out. Things usually go wrong for me. I have to struggle for everything I receive. Life is uncertain, and uncertainty is dangerous." Not because they chose to believe this, but because their experiences have written it into them year after year, disappointment after disappointment, until it became the invisible water they swim in. And because that assumption is dominant, because it runs underneath everything, even during visualization, affirmations, and moments of genuine belief, it is what manifests, not the desire, but the assumption beneath the desire. Now I want to talk about appearances, because this is where most people lose their footing. Not during the practice, but when they return to their daily life and the circumstances are still the same. When the bank account still reflects what it reflects, when the phone still doesn't ring with the news they're waiting for, when the body still feels what it feels. In those moments, and they always come, something rises up and says, "But look at the evidence. How can you claim it's working out when this is what's in front of you?" I want to address this directly because it is the central challenge of this entire teaching. Your senses are not lying, but they are delayed. What you see around you right now is not your present assumption made visible. It is your past assumption made visible. It is the physical expression of a state of consciousness you held weeks, months, sometimes years ago, now finally solid enough to be perceived. The circumstances you are observing are old data. They are, quite literally, history. When you look at a star in the night sky, you are not seeing that star as it is now. You are seeing light that left it thousands of years ago arriving at your eyes in this moment. The star itself may not even exist anymore. What you are seeing is a record of what was, not the reality of what is. Your circumstances work the same way. They are the light of old assumptions reaching you now. And if you let what you see determine what you assume, if you look at yesterday's consciousness and allow it to define today's inner state, you simply continue the cycle. Yesterday's assumption becomes today's circumstances, which become tomorrow's assumption, and then next week's reality. The mirror keeps reflecting the same image because you keep presenting the same expression. To break this cycle, you must be willing to assume something the evidence has not yet confirmed. Not in spite of intelligence, but because of it, because you understand that the unseen precedes the seen, that the inner always comes before the outer. If you want different circumstances, you must hold a different state and hold it before, not after, the circumstances change. This is what faith truly is. Not the feeling of certainty when everything is going well. Anyone can maintain their state when life is cooperating. Faith is maintaining your inner knowing precisely when the outer world tells a different story. That is its power. That is why it moves mountains. Let me tell you about a man I once knew who lived in quiet, constant dread. Not dramatic fear, but a subtle, ongoing tension. The low hum of someone always expecting the next thing to go wrong. Every small inconvenience confirmed his belief. Every delay felt like a warning. Life, being the faithful mirror that it is, reflected this perfectly. His car broke down at the worst times, his health began to reflect his anxiety, and his relationships mirrored the distance he kept from real joy. He was not unlucky or cursed. He was simply devoted to the wrong assumption. He had become, over time, incredibly skilled at expecting things to go wrong. I asked him to try something for 30 days, not to pretend life was perfect, not to suppress his concerns, but simply to add one sentence to his inner dialogue and mean it as sincerely as possible. Everything is always working out for me, not as hope, but as a statement of law. He practiced this quietly. At first, nothing visible changed, but internally, something began to shift. The dread still came, but it carried less weight. And alongside it, a new voice appeared, saying, "Even this is part of it working out." By the third week, things began to move, not dramatically, but naturally. Opportunities appeared, conversation shifted, and his health began to improve. At the end of the month, he said something unforgettable. "I don't know if I changed my life or just started seeing it correctly." The truth is, those are the same thing. Living as if everything works out for you is not a grand performance. It is a series of small, quiet choices made throughout the day. It is what you tell yourself when traffic delays you, when plans shift, when something doesn't go as expected. Instead of reinforcing the idea that things go wrong, you choose a different interpretation. You say, "I may not see the full picture yet, but I know this is part of it working out." Not as forced positivity, but as a grounded perspective. You begin to ask, what might this be redirecting me toward? What could this be protecting me from? What space is this creating? This is not naivety. It is the recognition that every detour you have ever taken eventually revealed its purpose. You simply didn't have to wait to understand it. You could have assumed it in the moment and lived with peace instead of anxiety. It is the realization that you have never, not once, been abandoned by life. That every closed door was eventually followed by another opening. That every ending carried within it the seed of a new beginning, even if you could not see it at the time. That what you once called failure was, in the end, always a kind of preparation. What if you could live from that understanding now? That question, when held sincerely and explored with real curiosity, becomes the doorway into the state I am describing. There is a passage that has been written, taught, and quoted for thousands of years. According to your faith, be it unto you. Most people read this as encouragement, as an invitation to believe more strongly. But it is not encouragement. It is a description. It is a precise and technical account of how reality forms. According to your faith, according to your assumption, your inner conviction, the state you actually occupy, rather than the one you wish you occupied, be it unto you. Not it might become, not you will receive it if you are worthy. Be it, present tense already. The teaching was never about offering comfort. It was about explaining the mechanism itself, and the instruction that accompanies it is just as exact. When you pray, believe that you have received and you shall receive. Not believe that you will receive. Believe that you already have. The past tense is everything because it collapses the gap between assumption and manifestation. It removes waiting from the equation entirely. It requires you to step into the state of already done, already given, already complete, and to remain there, not as a technique, but as identity. This is not complicated theology. It is the simplest possible instruction for working with the law. Assume you have received. Live from that assumption. Watch the world align and catch up. Now I want to address the question of how, because I can already hear it forming. How do I actually do this? How do I genuinely feel that everything is working out when the evidence appears to say otherwise? Here is the answer. You begin with memory. Earlier, you were asked to recall a time when something went wrong and later revealed itself as essential. You found something. That recognition, that moment of realizing it actually worked out, is not intellectual. It is felt. It has a distinct texture, a certain warmth in the chest, a softening in the shoulders, a release in the body. That feeling is your starting point. Close your eyes again and locate it. Let yourself truly sit inside it for even 30 seconds. Notice what happens in your body when you enter that recognition. How your breathing shifts, how the tension in your jaw loosens slightly, how your posture softens without effort. This is not imagination. This is memory, and memory is evidence of what is possible. Now, and this is the step that changes everything, generalize it. Do not leave it attached only to the past. Let it expand forward into the present moment. Let it include the uncertainty you are currently facing, the situation you are waiting to resolve, the outcome you cannot yet see. Say to yourself with that same felt quality, this too is working out for me. Notice whether you can find even a flicker, even the smallest spark of genuine recognition that this might be true. That flicker is enough. That flicker is the seed. You do not need a blaze. You only need something real. Water it. Return to it throughout your day, not by forcing a feeling you do not have, but by asking honestly, what if this is true? What would it feel like if I knew this was true? Let the feeling of the question, rather than the answer, guide you into the state. Over time, over days and weeks of this practice, that flicker becomes a flame. And the flame, given consistent attention, becomes a steady warmth that no longer requires effort to maintain. It simply becomes the way you are. You must understand something about the state I am describing. It has a very specific quality that separates it from positive thinking or forced optimism. It is not loud, it is not dramatic, it is stillness. When you are truly inside the assumption that everything is working out for you, you do not feel euphoric. You do not feel triumphant. You feel quiet. There is a calmness to it, a lack of urgency, a sense that something has finally been set down after being carried too long. You are no longer managing your anxiety about outcomes. You are no longer rehearsing worst-case scenarios as a form of protection. You are no longer checking constantly for signs or proof. You simply know. And from that knowing, everything about how you move through your day begins to shift. Your voice changes, not louder, but more grounded. There is something in you that is no longer available for panic because it is rooted somewhere deeper than panic can reach. People notice this, even if they cannot explain it. They feel it. There is a presence in someone who genuinely lives from this assumption, a quiet authority that has nothing to do with achievements or external validation. It is the authority of someone who knows that life is on their side, not because they have evidence, but because they have decided. And that decision, held consistently, eventually becomes identity. You become the person for whom everything works out. And the world, which always reflects your identity back to you with remarkable accuracy, rearranges itself accordingly. Let me speak about moments of difficulty, because they will come. This is not a promise of a life without challenge. It never has been. There will be moments, perhaps you are already in one, where everything around you seems to contradict what has been said here. Where the evidence is strong, where the loss is real, the pain is real, the fear is undeniable. What do you do then? You anchor yourself in the state, not by denying reality, but by refusing to let it define your assumption. You say to yourself, I may not understand this. I may not yet see its shape or purpose, but I know from my own life that what once looked like the worst often carried the greatest transformation. And so I choose, here and now, to remain faithful to the assumption that this too is working out for me. This is not weakness. This is strength in its most refined form. To remain in the state when everything seems to oppose it. To hold the assumption when the evidence suggests otherwise. This is the test, not as punishment, but as revelation. It shows you whether what you hold is a surface-level practice or something truly embodied. Each time you return to the state, each time you choose the assumption in the face of doubt, something deepens. The foundation becomes stronger. The belief becomes less fragile, less dependent on circumstances. And eventually, after enough of these moments, you arrive at a place where it no longer feels like effort. One quiet, ordinary morning, you simply know. Everything is working out for me, not as a practice, but as a fact. So ask yourself again, think of that moment that once felt like a disaster and later revealed itself as necessary. Now bring your awareness to the present, to whatever feels unresolved or uncertain in your life right now, and ask, what if this too is working out? What if this delay is protection? What if this closed door is redirection? What if this empty space is being prepared for something beyond what you have imagined? You do not need to answer. You only need to live inside the question. Let what if it is working out become the quiet, steady tone of your awareness. Not occasionally, not only during moments of reflection, but as the background of your entire experience. Start now, not later, not when things improve, but in this moment. Walk forward as someone who has decided, truly decided, not hesitantly hoped, that life is unfolding in their favor. Carry that assumption into tomorrow, and when doubt appears, as it will, do not resist it. Simply return. Everything is working out for me. Back to the knowing, back to the stillness. Each return makes it more natural. Each repetition makes it more real. Each moment of holding it in difficulty makes it more permanent. Until one day, it is no longer something you practice. It is simply who you are, the person for whom everything works out. And from that identity, from that deeply held assumption, everything must align, because that is the law. Not sometimes, not occasionally, always. You are not at the mercy of life. You are not a passive observer. You are the assumption from which life takes form. And when you assume, truly assume in your core, in the silence of your thoughts, in the feeling beneath your words, that everything is always working out for you, you are not making a wish. You are declaring a reality, before the world has reflected it back. And the world, which has always been your mirror, your echo, your faithful reflection, will respond. It will reorganize. It will align. It always does. It always has. It always will.